Welcome, everyone, and thanks for tuning in to this year's Global Business Impact Summit. I hope you have enjoyed perhaps one or maybe many other webinars already focused around BPM, EA, and GRC. Today's speaker is Guido Appels. He is the project manager of the Support Unit Digital Information and Technology at Euretco. He has implemented Adonis within Euretco and will share his experiences from this pilot project. Some of the points he will cover are how you will win time and time again by actually spending some time on BPM and business architecture, how picking people's minds translates into making that knowledge accessible to all minds, how connecting single snapshots to a full motion picture creates the bigger value. Let me just quickly introduce myself. My name is Pablo Roberto Struck, and I will be your host for today's webinar. So without any further ado, Guido, you can now take over.
Thank you, Pablo, for handing over to me and for giving me the opportunity to contribute to this summit. First off, let me further introduce myself and, more importantly, the company I work for. My name is Guido Appels. I was born in 1968 and started my career in 1992. I can't help but wonder what effect the corona pandemic would have had back then. I did not even have an internet connection at home before 1998. Imagine that. But to continue, I work for the Support Unit Digital Information and Technology, DIT for short, of the Dutch company Euretco. I have actually been employed in several positions inside and outside of the IT field throughout the 30 years I've worked for Euretco so far. My current job title is Project Manager, but as it shows in Adonis, I do in fact have several distinct roles in the organization. In addition to that, I really like to step outside the boundaries of specific job descriptions to help improve the organization as a whole. The core business of Euretco is to offer retail, franchise, wholesale and financial services in fashion, home, sports, media and DIY. Euretco has a substantial number of subsidiaries, as you can see here. Just as a side note, I created this overview in 2016 when I was briefly employed as, believe it or not, a company lawyer for Euretco. I hold a degree in Dutch civil law since 1991 and thought in 2016, when an opportunity presented itself, that it was time for a career change. Only to find that company lawyership was not my thing. Most of all, I hated the nasty conflicts of interest and legal battles and missed working together with colleagues on common goals and new features and initiatives. To continue the introduction of my company, in its turn, Euretco is a subsidiary, a daughter company, of the German company EK Service Group. The unit DIT that I work for as a project manager supports both Euretco, EK and many subsidiaries, together often referred to internally as the group. As you can imagine, in light of this playing field, at DIT we must support tons of different applications, services, processes, interfaces, customizations and so forth. As luck would have it, a lot of relevant knowledge is present in our organization, the group. We literally stumble over all that knowledge. Really. It can be found in Word documents, PDFs, Excel files, on handwritten notes, in people's drawers, in folders and subfolders in OneDrive, SharePoint, email or shared drives, and first and foremost, of course, in the minds of people. The people that haven't left the company, that is. And better still, all the information is totally accurate. It describes almost every process, functionality, even the purpose in amazing detail. You may not believe this, but it's true. There are many precise descriptions of the actual state. as it was back in the day, and somewhere. Take, for example, the overview of Euretco and subsidiaries I showed you earlier. Totally accurate information. I should know, I gathered it myself. In 2016, that is. Since then, some companies have been dissolved, other companies were part of mergers, some were sold. EK Service Group now holds all Euretco shares. Do I have an updated view? Nope, I don't. Can I easily find a similar view? Perhaps. Most projects that I embark upon start with information gathering aimed at establishing the is situation as a sensible starting point for business process redesign. It takes a lot of time and effort to identify knowledge bearers and stakeholders, to find documentation lying around, to verify the documentation status, whether it's up to date or not, to update and complete the information, mostly by picking the brains of colleagues, in hopes they are still in the organization, and to restructure the information, so to create coherent overviews of core processes and required functionalities. When studying law, you learn to always verify and then structure information in a clear, coherent and logical way. This is the only way you can properly apply the rules of law and reach a logical conclusion. I've always believed that having access to structured information is crucial for IT nerds such as me. This belief turned into a conviction when I worked for Euretco's subsidiary RetailPay. RetailPay offers financial services to retailers and suppliers of EK Service Group and Euretco, but also to similar third parties. Each of those parties could demand a review of internal processes and procedures to be performed by an accountant of their own choice. This could have led to 5 individual audits carried out each year, each performed by a different accountant with its own questions and demands. We then chose to acquire an ISAE 3402 Type 2 audit certificate. This is an international assurance standard that provides assurance to an organization's customer that the service organization has adequate internal controls. The auditor of the customer could then rely on the certificate of the service organization, resulting in a reduced necessary audit budget. Being employed as project quality manager for RetailPay back in 2006, I was responsible for setting up the framework and descriptions of all relevant processes. I immediately appreciated the structure and insights provided by the BPM solution that was available back then. This was not Adonis, by the way. I used much of the information I just shared with you to convince our ICT director that it would be a good idea to invest time and money in a BPM solution. We sent out a basic request for information to 3 possible service providers. One of those service providers, of course, was Bock Group. Based on review and comparison of all information received, Adonis NP turned out to be the BPM tool of choice. By the end of January 2021, Adonis was completely set up, and I was trained as an admin and as a designer. Logging in as designer, I can select one of 2 repositories. Setting up the Euretco repository, I used the Ado Moneybank sample content as a source of inspiration. I have copied, for example, the folder structure found in the sample content repository to the Euretco repository, skipping some folders that I considered irrelevant for now. For example, the folders for object types risks, controls, and performance indicators. So now when I log into the Euretco repository, you will see a similar, be it slightly shorter list of folders. And notice that I didn't copy the subfolder structure, but created my own based on the organizational specifics of Euretco. I then moved on to create objects and first focused on the object types user, performer, organizational unit, and role. I looked for relevant information in our company's Facebook, only to find that data was incomplete, outdated, and inconsistent. Based on this finding, I got partially sidetracked reviewing and optimizing the procedures for employee data maintenance. This review resulted in the start of a project to connect our HR system to our Active Directory. This connection will be implemented in November 2021. And so what I learned from this: process optimization can even start before BPM data is made available in the BPM tool. As a project manager, I most often run several projects simultaneously. I started to register such projects as initiatives in Adonis. This helps me to keep track. I am also currently trying to convince our newly appointed Program Management Officer that she should also apply Adonis to obtain and provide insights in the overall program portfolio and the assignment of roles and responsibilities therein via the RACI grid, as I show you here. In another project that started in February of this year, I used the information gathered in numerous meetings to create process descriptions as models. I then shared these descriptions, one of which you see on screen, with the people whose brain I had picked and asked for confirmation and feedback. I never received any confirmation. One remark was, "We simply trust that you have done a good job." Since we now want to use these descriptions to issue requests for information, I regret not pushing for actual confirmation back then. And this is the second learning. Insist on verification and confirmation of the models you create. Another project currently running involves the migration of most applications and services used by the group to Microsoft Azure. A so-called cloud readiness assessment has taken place in 2020. Dozens of applications and services had been identified in that assessment. The data was made available in several documents and as such kind of scattered all over the place as usual. I took it upon me to verify, update and register the information in Adonis. During that process, I found a small number of applications and services that had not been identified in the assessment, not registered by choice, or were implemented after the assessment, such as Adonis, NP, for which you see the information on screen. Also, verification showed inconsistencies and information gaps that I am still trying to repair for all these applications and services that are currently used. Making repairs to information requires quite a lot of effort and time. This is true for me, but also for the people I have to involve in making these repairs. In other words, the colleagues whose brain I pick. Over time, I realized that it is important to not only get information, but also explain why I need the information and how processing it would benefit the colleagues involved in the future. That is why I started creating a starter model that I show you here that will help me explain to colleagues what I'm working on. I have learned that sharing this information increases the willingness of colleagues to actually share information with me. So, what do I tell my colleagues? Well, I show them this concept for a starter model that will act as a dashboard for all colleagues in the group. For every business unit and every department within each business unit, there would typically be a button providing access to a next level where information can be found that is relevant for that department specifically. Also, ideally, for each business unit, be it a commercial unit, a financial services unit, or a support unit, an organization chart would be available. Since you have to start somewhere, I chose to start with the next level starter model for my own department, the support unit, digital information and technology. This tile for DIT shows a link to the organization chart of the department. From here, I can easily find relevant information regarding people's places in the unit. Let's take my place, for example. I'll press Ctrl F, search for my name. One object is found. And then I can easily access information regarding their roles, assigned initiatives, applications, etc. by simply clicking Open and selecting Insights, where I can open, close, and open other informations. For easier navigation, I also added a button to return to the EK BPM homepage, where I will now click the B2B Applications Department button. The aim of this starter model is to allow me and my colleagues to find and access information quickly. For example, this starter model would provide quick access to the organization chart that I showed you before. I have added links that I consider helpful for the Azure migration. Let's say, for example, that I would like to have insights in what objects are affected by the migration of services to Azure. Then I would click Open, click Insights, close this box, and then I would have some indication of the objects involved in this migration. For example, the applications, the infrastructure elements, and I can get this full list. And for example, the specific services. Let me close this one. In the middle of this view, you can see an overview of all applications currently used by EK, or that have been used by EK in the past. If I, for example, select Microsoft AX 2012, one of those applications, right-click and then choose References, then I can see references to all the objects related to this application. The application responsibility, being the solution provider, the assigned initiatives, the dependencies, reference data objects, a small number of those, reference documents, the departments, the organizational units that use this application, and some other information regarding responsibility, etc. And also, I won't show all the reference, there are a lot of them, all the infrastructure elements, services, and interfaces that are related to Microsoft AX. I had to spend some time on developing the starter models and doing the demos, but it's time well spent, I assure you. Over these past 6 months, I've learned a lot. I have collected quite a bit of data, objects, models, but still those are snapshots, nothing more. But it's a loose and incomplete collection of snapshots. It's kind of like a bird that cannot yet fly. My next task is to start sharing the information widely and to start involving people, colleagues, as developers in Adonis. And I hope that this will result in positive reinforcement. People add information to Adonis. Adonis becomes more useful. Because of that, people will want to add information to Adonis to make it even more useful. And in the end, the result would be kind of a full motion picture that describes all the processes, all the objects, all the users. In short, that would create kind of a digital twin of the Euretco organization. Thank you very much for your attention and for hearing me out. And with that, I'd like to hand over back to you, Pablo.
Thanks, Guido, for giving us an interesting and clearly structured insight into Euretco, and in particular your Adonis pilot project. It's very much appreciated. And for our viewers, if there are any questions revolving Euretco, Guido, and of course his Adonis implementation and approach, you are very welcome to reach out to us or Guido himself at any time. On the topic of process management, but also enterprise architecture or GRC, there will be several other exciting presentations at our Global Business Impact Summit. For example, on the 14th of September, Derek Black of Apex will be presenting how, with a proper enterprise architecture in place, mergers and acquisitions can be significantly streamlined through improved speed and efficiency. On the 20th of September, Josephine Joannick of Suez will explain how Suez defined modeling and access rights conventions in a multi-site business context. Also, for other webinars previously aired, you can request a recording from us at any time. More helpful resources can be found in the recommendations below this video. So finally, we hope this session, thoughtfully laid out by our presenter Guido, was insightful and shed some light into an Adonis pilot project. Thanks again, Guido, for sharing your time with us. And also thanks to all the viewers who have tuned in. Goodbye.